"You're too close, asked Cowboy," the Apache girl warned the lone cowboy who wanted her heart. Her voice trembled like a string pulled too tight, half fear, half longing. In the quiet desert dawn, his shadow fell across her fire, breaking the fragile peace between them. But in her eyes, he saw something even the wind dared not touch. Was it warning or invitation? The sun had barely risen over the red mesas when he found her again, kneeling by the river, washing blood from her hands that weren't hers. The storm of the night before had left tracks in the mud, footprints leading nowhere. He followed them without reason, driven by something he couldn't name. She had told him to stay away. He hadn't listened. The cowboy's horse snorted at the scent of smoke lingering in the canyon air. There'd been riders, men who left more than footprints behind. He tightened the reins and scanning the ridge for movement. Nothing but wind and vultures. Yet the silence felt wrong. Too heavy, too deliberate. Somewhere in that stillness, he sensed her fear. When she rose, her hair caught the light like black fire. She didn't turn to face him, but her words drifted across the river, sharp and steady. "You shouldn't have come." "I don't take kindly to warnings," he said. "And I don't give them twice." She dipped her hands back into the current, letting the water run red before it cleared. Between them, the river glimmered like a wound refusing to close. He saw the way she moved, careful, measured, as if every motion cost her a piece of strength she no longer had to spare. "You're bleeding," he said. "It's not mine." "Whose then?" "Someone who thought I'd forget." Her tone carried no anger, only the ache of someone who'd learned too much about surviving. He wanted to ask more, but a single crow's cry from the cliffs cut through their words. She froze. He reached instinctively for his gun, but she shook her head. "No," she whispered. "Not yet." The river rippled. The air thickened with dust. And then came the echo of hooves. The cowboy turned toward the sound, jaw tightening. But when he looked back, the girl was gone, vanished into the brush like smoke caught in wind. Only her words remained, carried faintly through the canyon walls. "You're too close, cowboy, and they'll kill you for it." The cowboy rode hard through the canyon's throat, the echo of hooves drumming like a heartbeat chasing itself. Every ridge looked the same, every shadow a promise of danger. But he wasn't turning back. Not after hearing her voice again, half warning, half plea. A broken wagon lay near the ridge, its wheel cracked clean through. He dismounted, crouching beside it. The ashes in a small fire pit were still warm. She hadn't gone far. He found a scrap of cloth near the embers, torn, blood-stained, tied with sinew. Apache stitching. Hers. He pressed it between his fingers, feeling the faint scent of smoke and wild sage. "She's close," he muttered. From the canyon rim a vulture screamed. He turned, hand on his revolver, scanning the cliffside. Nothing but wind, until a rock tumbled, bouncing toward him. Then another. "Easy," he said to his horse. The animal snorted, ears flicking back. That's when he heard it, a soft whistle cutting through the wind. 3 notes, a signal, not his. He dove for cover as a bullet cracked the dirt beside his boot. "Don't shoot," he growled under his breath, drawing his gun. The echo of the shot died slow. He waited, eyes narrowing. A faint rustle came from above. Someone moved along the ridge, careful, confident. "You sure picked the wrong canyon," he whispered. A second shot whistled past his hat. He rolled, returned fire once, just to make a point. The bullet sparked off the stone. Silence followed, heavy and deliberate. Then a voice drifted down. "You aim like a drunk, cowboy." He froze. "Girl," he called. "That you?" A pause. "You should have stayed gone." He lowered his gun slowly, heart pounding. "Then stop shooting." Another pause. Then a soft laugh, low and bitter. "If I wanted you dead, I wouldn't miss." Dust rose near the ridge, and she appeared, bow slung across her shoulder, hair tangled, cheeks streaked with dirt. She looked smaller from below, but no less dangerous. "You followed me," she said. "You left blood behind." "I left a warning." She came down the slope, one careful step at a time. He wanted to move toward her, to close the distance, but something in her eyes told him not to. She stopped 10 feet away, bows still drawn. "You brought them here," she said. "Brought who?" "Men with badges. I saw their tracks." He frowned. "Ain't no lawman that'd ride this far." "Not law. Bounty." The word fell heavy. He looked at her hands. Steady, ready. "How long you been running?" he asked. "Long enough to know kindness gets you killed." She lowered the bow a fraction. The tension eased, but only for a breath. "Sit," she said suddenly. "What?" "Sit down. You're bleeding." He looked at his arm, a shallow graze from the earlier shot. He hadn't felt it till now. She tore a strip from her sleeve and bound it tight, fingers working quick and sure. "That's the second time you've saved me," he said. "I didn't do it for you." "Then for who?" She tied the knot harder than she needed to, for the quiet. He smiled faintly. "That's gratitude in Apache, right?" She shot him a look sharp enough to cut glass. "That's silence." For a moment, neither spoke. Only the sound of the wind and a far-off thunder roll breaking the stillness. "Why do you keep coming back?" she asked finally. "Because you keep disappearing. That's the point. I'm stubborn." "You're a fool." He grinned. "Most fools got reasons." She turned away. "Then yours will bury you." Before he could answer, a sound rolled through the canyon, metal striking stone, then another. Chains. Hoofbeats. The faint murmur of men talking low. Her expression changed. The color drained from her face. "They found us," she whispered. "Who?" "The ones I stole from—" He stepped closer, but she held up a hand. "No," she said. "You ride east. Forget me. Not happening. You don't understand. I don't need to." He reached for her arm. For a second, she didn't pull away. Then she did, swift and final. "You'll die for me, cowboy," she said, "and I'm not worth dying for." The echo of chains grew louder. Dust rose behind the ridge like a storm. He chambered around. "We'll find out." A shadow crested the ridge. 6 riders, rifles glinting in the dying light. The cowboy turned to face them, thumb brushing the hammer of his revolver. Beside him, the Apache girl notched an arrow, her breath steady. The wind carried her whisper. "You're too close it's again." The riders came slow, dust curling around them like smoke. 6 men, faces half hidden by hats, guns easy in their hands. The lead rider had a silver star pinned to his vest, tarnished by sun and lies. He smiled when he saw them, 2 shapes against the rocks, a cowboy and a girl too proud to kneel. "Well," he drawled, "looks like our little ghost found herself company." The cowboy stepped forward, revolver loose at his side. "Don't recall inviting lawmen to this canyon." The man's grin didn't fade. "Ain't law you're facing, son. Just debt collection." The girl's eyes narrowed. "Do you work for Cutter?" The man tipped his hat. "Still remembers your name, still wants what you took." She said nothing. The cowboy glanced at her, reading what she wouldn't say. He didn't need the details. The way her hand shook near her bow was enough. "I don't know this Cutter," he said. The man chuckled. "Then you best keep it that way." He nodded to his men. "Take her." Before they could move, the girl's arrow sang through the air. One of the riders cried out, clutching his arm. The cowboy fired once, clean warning, a bullet hitting dirt between 2 boots. The lead rider stopped smiling. "You just made yourself expensive, friend." "Guess I'll pay in lead," the cowboy said. Gunfire erupted, echoing off the canyon walls. The horse reared, screaming. The girl dropped to one knee, loading fast. The cowboy moved beside her, covering their flank. "3 left," she shouted. "I count 4. "Then count faster." They fell back toward the narrow ravine, dust and gun smoke blending in the sun's glare. One rider went down hard, rolling from his saddle. The others regrouped, circling like wolves. "Cutter won't stop," one yelled. "He'll have to catch his breath first," the cowboy muttered, reloading. She turned to him, eyes burning. "Why are you helping me?" "Because you didn't run." Her breath caught, but before she could speak, another bullet split the air. The cowboy shoved her down, firing blind over the rocks. The shot hit true. Silence followed. The last rider hesitated, then fled, spurring his horse up the ridge. The echo of hooves faded into the hills. They waited, breathing hard, listening for more. Nothing. just the low moan of wind and the smell of burned powder. He looked at her. Dirt streaked across her face, blood at her sleeve. "You hurt?" She shook her head. "Not enough." He gave a faint grin. "Good." She frowned. "You shouldn't have done that." "What?" "Shoot back." "Stay." "I told you," he said quietly. "I don't take warnings." Her bow lowered, the string trembling in her hands. For the first time, she looked tired, like the fight had drained more than blood. "You don't understand what you've started," she said. "Then tell me." She glanced toward the ridge. "Cutter's not chasing money, he's chasing silence." The cowboy's brow furrowed. "Meaning?" She met his eyes. "I saw something I shouldn't have, and now everyone who hears my story dies before they finish it." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then I guess I'll try not to finish it." She almost smiled. Almost. Then the smile died. Her gaze fixed on the horizon. A distant shimmer of light caught her eye, sunlight flashing off metal. Another rider, far off, watching, waiting. "They're not done," she whispered. The cowboy followed her stare, hand tightening on his gun. "No," he said, "they're just getting close." The cowboy and the Apache girl rode until the canyon turned to dusk. Shadows stretched long across the earth, and the heat of the day gave way to the chill of wind. Neither spoke. The silence between them was heavy, like a truth waiting to be told. When they finally stopped, it was by an abandoned chapel, its roof half gone, the bell rusted and still. The girl dismounted first, her movements slow but sure. The cowboy watched her check the ground, the tracks, the wind. Every action she took carried the quiet precision of someone who had lived too long on the edge of danger. "You know they'll follow," he said. "They already are," she replied. "Carter's men don't quit till someone's buried." He nodded toward the chapel door. "Inside—" She hesitated. "This place has ghosts," he smirked. "So do I." She pushed the door open. The hinges groaned, and dust fell like old memories. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of cedar and rain that never came. Pews lay overturned. A single candle, melted down to a stub, sat beside a cracked cross. She knelt by it, striking a match. "You pray?" he asked. "I remember," she said softly. He leaned against the wall, rolling a cigarette he never lit. "You really think Cutter wants you for what you saw?" She looked up at him, the flame flickering in her eyes. "He doesn't want me. He wants what I carry." "What's that?" "Proof." He frowned. "Proof of what?" "That the land he stole wasn't his to sell." The cowboy exhaled slow. "Land makes men cruel. It makes them liars," she said. "And he's killed enough to keep the lie breathing." He studied her, the lines of wear beneath her calm. "And you? Why keep running if you could end it?" She stared at the dying flame. "Because ending it means standing still. And standing still gets you killed." Outside, a coyote howled. The sound echoed off the rocks, low and drawn out. The cowboy moved to the window, peering through the cracks. Nothing but the long stretch of desert and the shimmer of moonlight on stone. "You can rest a while," he said. "I'll keep watch." She shook her head. "You don't understand what kind of men they are." He turned back to her. "I've been that kind." Their eyes met. The air between them tightened. "You could still leave," she said. "I could," he answered, "but I won't." The wind shifted, carrying the faint jingle of metal, the sound of spurs against stone. She rose instantly, snuffing the candle. The chapel fell into darkness. "How many?" he whispered. "3, maybe 4, she breathed. "They found the trail." He cocked his gun, voice low. "Then we hold the line." She reached out, touched his arm, a small gesture, quick as lightning. "If they take me," she said, "don't let them take what's in my satchel." "What's in it?" "Everything that'll burn Cutter's name to ash." He nodded once. "Then we'll keep it lit." A boot scraped outside the door, then another. The cowboy's grip tightened on the revolver. The girl notched an arrow, breath steady. Through the crack in the wall, moonlight caught the gleam of a rifle barrel. The cowboy whispered, "Ready." Her answer came soft, certain, always. The chapel door shuddered once. Then again, and then it burst open. The chapel shook with the force of the door breaking open. Splinters flew across the dark, slicing through the silence like sharp breath. The cowboy fired once, the muzzle flash lighting the room for a heartbeat. A man fell forward, hitting the pew hard. Two more burst through after him, shouting, their boots slamming against the wood. The Apache girl moved first, quick, low, deliberate. Her arrow found the second man's shoulder before he could aim. He screamed, spinning backward into the wall. The cowboy turned his shot toward the third and grazing his thigh. The man stumbled, dropping his rifle but managing to swing a knife. The cowboy caught his wrist mid-air, twisting hard until the blade fell. He slammed the man against the wall, gun pressed to his chest. "Talk!" The man spat blood. "You can't stop him!" "Cutter!" The man's grin was cracked teeth and arrogance. "He's already coming!" The cowboy pulled the trigger. The body slid down the wall, quiet. The girl stood near the altar, breathing hard. They'll smell the blood before dawn. He reloaded, eyes still scanning the open doorway. Then we move before they do. She glanced at the satchel at her feet. "You'll die for carrying that." He met her gaze. "Then I'll die walking." They stepped out into the night. The moon hung low and heavy, painting the land silver. Coyotes yipped in the distance. Each step they took echoed louder than it should. "Where's Cutter's camp?" he asked. "East, past the dry wash. Old mission ground." He looked at her sharply. "You been there?" "I escaped there." She didn't elaborate, and he didn't ask. The air between them said enough. They rode through the night in silence. Around them, the desert whispered, the rustle of mesquite, the sigh of wind against stone. Somewhere behind, faint and distant, came the echo of hooves. By dawn, they reached the old mission. Only bones of walls remained, half-eaten by sand and time. She dismounted, running her hand along the stones. "This is where he built his lie," she said. "How?" "He buried my people under these floors, called it God's land, then sold it." The cowboy's jaw tightened. "And the papers?" "In the satchel, signed by the same men now hunting us." He looked toward the horizon. "Then we show them the truth. You think truth scares men like Cutter? It scares the ones who hide behind it." She gave a faint, weary smile. "Then you're about to meet a lot of frightened men." A rustle from the scrub pulled her attention. She turned, bow raised, but it was too late. A figure stepped out from the shadows, rifle leveled. The sun caught his badge. "Drop it," he said. The cowboy froze. The man's voice was steady, the tone of someone who'd killed enough to speak soft. "Name's Briggs," the man continued. "Bounty office sent me for both of you." "There's no bounty on me," the cowboy said. "Not yet." The girl's arrow wavered. "You work for Cutter." Briggs's smile was thin. "Work for whoever pays my supper." He tilted his head, studying her. "You made him look bad, sweetheart. Took something shiny." She shifted her stance. "What if I give it back?" He laughed once. "Too late for bargains." The cowboy stepped forward. "You sure about that?" Briggs's finger twitched near the trigger. "Back off." "Or what?" Briggs fired. The shot missed, barely. The cowboy lunged, slamming into him before the second could leave the barrel. They crashed into the sand, wrestling for control. The rifle spun out of reach. The girl kicked it away, drew her knife, and pressed it to Briggs's throat. "Stop," she hissed. "You make one more move, and you meet your maker." Briggs froze. The cowboy caught his breath, sweat and dust clinging to his face. "You're not like him," Briggs said to her. "You kill me, you'll prove him right." She hesitated, knife trembling. "Don't listen," the cowboy warned. Briggs's eyes gleamed. "He'll turn on you too, girl. All men do." She drew in a sharp breath, then drove the knife into the dirt beside his head. "Go," she whispered, "before I change my mind." Briggs scrambled up, clutching his shoulder. "Cutter'll find you," he spat. "He always does." Then he limped off into the scrub, vanishing with the wind. The cowboy looked at her. "You should have let me finish it." She shook her head. "Killing him would make no difference. Cutter's closer than you think." He frowned. "How close?" Her gaze turned east, where the rising sun bled red across the sky. "Close enough," she said, "to smell the fire." They buried the 3 men in shallow graves by the river. using flat stones to mark the mounds. The work was silent. The wind carried only the scrape of shovels and the breath of the dying fire. When it was done, the cowboy wiped the dirt from his hands and looked to her. "You should rest," he said. She shook her head. "Rest comes when they stop coming." He studied her, dust in her hair, blood on her sleeve, eyes still sharp. "You ever get tired of running?" Her voice was quiet. "I got tired the first time they called me property." He said nothing. Instead, he walked to the creek, filled the canteen, and brought it back. She drank slowly, every swallow steady. It was the only peace they'd had since the shooting. "You could leave tonight," she said, handing back the canteen. "Ride north and find the border. No one would follow." He looked toward the horizon. "Maybe. But something tells me you'd still find trouble." A faint smirk crossed her lips. "Maybe I was born for it." He sat beside her, the firelight cutting soft lines across his face. "No one's born for trouble," he said. "They just learn to walk through it." She looked at him for a long time, then down at her hands. "You sound like a preacher. Just a man with regrets." She turned the small satchel over in her lap. "Cutter took this land from my mother. She died before she could prove it was ours. The papers in here, letters, maps, names. They'll ruin him if anyone still cares about truth." "They will," he said. "No," she replied, eyes narrowing. "They won't. But they'll remember. That's enough." He watched her stand, shoulders squared against the fading light. "You said you saw something that made him hunt you." She hesitated. "I saw him bury a child." The words hung there, heavy as thunder. "His own?" he asked. "Not his." "Mine." He went still. "You—" "He burned my village to claim the land. My child was inside the church. I dug her out with my own hands." Her voice broke like dry wood. "I kept digging, even when there was nothing left to save." The cowboy swallowed hard. "You should have told me sooner." She looked away. "Would it have changed anything?" "No," he said softly. "But I'd have understood the fire in your eyes." They stood there, two broken silhouettes framed by the dying sun. Then came the sound, distant but clear, the shriek of a hawk and the faint rhythm of hooves. "They found us again," she whispered. "Cutter's men." "No," she said. "Cutter himself." He grabbed his saddlebag, eyes scanning the ridges. "Then we move." She stopped him. "No, not this time." He frowned. "What are you saying?" She untied the satchel, pulling out a single folded map, worn soft with age. "There's a cave north of here, sacred ground. My people hid what's left of our past there. You take this and go." "I'm not leaving you." Her tone hardened. "This isn't about me." "Like hell it ain't." The sound of riders grew louder. She shoved the map into his chest. "You can't fight him and save this. Choose one." He stared at her, dust rising in the distance, 6 riders cutting through the dusk. "Fine," he said, "but I ain't choosing yet." He mounted fast, scanning the horizon. The girl drew her bow, every muscle taut. When Cutter's voice came, it rolled across the canyon like thunder wrapped in silk. "You've cost me time, girl, and I don't forgive thieves." She raised her chin. "You took what was never yours." "Everything here's mine," he said, smiling from his horse, "even what you bury." The cowboy stepped forward. "That map says otherwise." Cutter's eyes shifted to him. "You must be the fool she found in the dust." "Maybe," the cowboy said, "but I ain't blind to what's right." Cutter's smile vanished. He raised his hand, his men spread out, rifles ready. The cowboy whispered, "When I move, head for the trees." She whispered back, "When I move, don't stop me." He looked at her. Something in her eyes told him she wasn't planning on running. Cutter's voice rose again. "Last chance, girl. Give me what's mine, and I'll make it quick." She drew her bow, aimed straight at his heart. "Then I'll make it quicker." The canyon went still. Then, like lightning, both sides moved. Yes, proceed. The first bullet struck stone, sparking light across the canyon wall. The second found wood, splintering the cart behind them. The air filled with smoke and thunder, echoing off every ridge. The cowboy ducked behind a fallen beam, firing twice. 2 of Cutter's men dropped, their horses scattering. The girl moved fast, loosing arrows between shots, every strike precise. But there were too many, riders closing in from both flanks. dust swirling into chaos. "Fall back," he shouted. She shook her head. "They'll flank us anyway." "Then we make it hurt." Cutter rode forward, calm amid the storm. His rifle rested across his saddle like a crown. "You think the desert'll hide you, boy?" he called out. "It buries everyone the same." The cowboy fired again. The bullet grazed Cutter's sleeve. The outlaw only smiled. "I'll give you this," Cutter said. "You've got sand." "More than you'll have left when I'm done," the cowboy growled. The girl grabbed his arm. "Stop wasting breath." She pointed toward the dry riverbed. "There's a narrow pass behind that ridge. We go now. They'll lose the trail." He nodded, covering her as she ran. Bullets kicked up dirt around her feet, but she didn't flinch. She reached her horse, swung up, and turned back for him. "Hurry!" He mounted and spurred forward, ducking low. The two of them vanished into the gulch just as Cutter's men regrouped, shouting orders. They rode hard, wind tearing through the canyon, sand biting their faces. Behind them came the thunder of pursuit. "How far does this trail run?" he shouted. "Until it doesn't," she said. "That's supposed to be comforting." "No?" They reached a dead end, two cliffs meeting like jaws. The girl dismounted, searching the rock wall with her hands. "There's a split," she murmured. "Somewhere here." Bullets chipped stone above them. "Make it quick," he yelled. "Found it." A narrow crevice opened, just wide enough for a horse to squeeze through. She led her mare inside first. He followed, glancing back once. Cutter's men reached the ridge moments too late. "Tracks end here," one of them shouted. "Then find where they start again." Cutter barked. The cowboy and the girl kept moving through the dark passage, the air damp and cool. The sound of pursuit faded until only their breathing remained. At the tunnel's end, moonlight spilled through an opening. They emerged into a hidden valley, small, quiet, untouched. The river that once fed it had long dried to dust, but the stones still gleamed pale as bone. The girl slid off her horse, touching the ground like it was sacred. "This is where my mother hid the letters," she said softly. He looked around. "Safe here. For a while." He tied the horses and followed her toward a cluster of boulders. She knelt beside one, prying at the base with her knife. A hollow space opened beneath. Inside lay a bundle wrapped in deer hide. She lifted it with both hands, reverent. "These prove everything, his land theft, his lies, his killings." He crouched beside her. "Then we take them to someone who'll listen." "Who listens to ghosts?" she said. "Someone will—" She turned the letters over, tracing her mother's name on one of the seals. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but memory. He looked at her. "When this is over, what'll you do?" "Bury her again," she said. "This time, where the sun can find her." The words caught him off guard. "That's a good place to start." She smiled faintly. "You talk like a man who's already chosen where he'll die." He shrugged. "Maybe I have." They sat there in silence and the moon high above them. For a brief moment, the desert was still, almost gentle. Then a faint whistle cut through the air. Her head snapped up. "They found the pass." "How?" "Briggs," she whispered. "He must have told them." The cowboy stood, checking his gun. "Then we finish what we started." She rose too, bow in hand, eyes hard as flint. "No running?" "No running." The first torchlight flickered on the ridge. The sound of horses drifted closer. The cowboy chambered a fresh round. "You said this place was sacred." "It was." He nodded once. "Then let's make it remembered." The first torch dropped into the valley like a falling star. Then another. Within seconds, firelight rippled across the rocks, and the night came alive with shouts. The cowboy crouched low behind a boulder, loading his last rounds. "How many?" "Too many," the girl answered, notching an arrow. "They've got dogs." He glanced toward her. "You scared?" She met his eyes. "Not anymore." The first shots cracked through the dark. Bullets sparked against the stone, one grazing the edge of her braid. She didn't flinch. Her arrow found a throat in reply. Cutter's voice cut through the noise, calm as ever. "Give me the letters, and you both walk out alive." The cowboy shouted back. "That ain't how you treat guests." Cutter laughed. You're not guests, son. You're reminders. More gunfire. The cowboy fired back, each shot deliberate. Reminders of what? That mercy is for fools. The girl leaned close. They're spreading out. He's herding us to the open. He nodded. Then we move before the pen closes. She pointed toward a line of dead mesquite. There's a ravine behind those trees. Shallow, but it'll take us west. Go, he said. I'll cover. She shook her head. You'll die here. Maybe. But you won't. She looked at him a long moment, long enough for the thunder of guns to fade beneath the silence between them. Then she grabbed the satchel and ran. He rose to fire one last time, cutting down 2 more before the hammer clicked empty. Then he followed, sprinting after her through dust and smoke. They reached the ravine just as dawn began to bleed into the sky. The valley below glowed faintly blue, smoke curling like ghosts over the dead. She stumbled once while catching herself on a stone. You hurt? He asked. Not mine, she said, echoing her old words. He gave a dry laugh. You sure like borrowing lines. They still fit. They climbed higher until the shouts below faded into wind. The girl sank to her knees, gasping. The cowboy knelt beside her, scanning the horizon. They'll regroup, he said. Then we finish it before they do. He turned to her. You got a plan? She nodded toward the ridge. There's an old telegraph post near the road. If we reach it, I can send the proof to Santa Fe. Once it's sent, Cutter's power dies. Then we ride for that post. She hesitated. It's a day's ride. No food, no water. Then we make it in half. He helped her up. Her hand lingered in his for just a moment, long enough for something unspoken to pass between them. The journey through the ridge was cruel. The sun rose merciless, turning the world to gold and pain. Every step felt heavier, every sound sharper. They rode in silence, trading glances instead of words. Around noon, they stopped by a small outcrop of stone. He tore a piece of jerky in half and handed it to her. She shook her head. Eat, he said. I ain't arguing. She took it quietly. After a few bites, she said, You ever wonder why men like Cutter win? Because they think they already have. And you? He looked at her, squinting against the sun. I don't think I keep moving. She smiled faintly. You sound like a storm. He smirked. Storms pass. Not always. The heat shimmered off the rocks when a new sound reached them, the distant hum of hooves again. Cutter's men, slower this time, but coming steady. The girl straightened. He won't stop. Then he'll break trying. She reached into the satchel, pulling out one of the letters. If we fail, burn these. He took the letter, the parchment soft and warm from her touch. If we fail, he said, there won't be anyone left to burn anything. The ground trembled slightly, a rumble of thunder not from the sky, but from hooves on stone. The girl looked toward the west. The telegraph post is beyond that ridge. Then that's where we'll stand. The cowboy adjusted his hat, eyes narrowing against the glare. You said once I was too close. I did. He smiled. Guess I still am. The wind rose, carrying sand and the scent of gunpowder. She drew her bow. He cocked his revolver, and as the riders crested the ridge, both of them knew this fight wouldn't end with words. The ridge rose steep and cruel beneath them, the sun beating down like judgment. The horses struggled for footing, their breaths ragged and hot. Below, Cutter's riders closed in, a line of dust and vengeance stretching across the desert floor. The girl's hands tightened on the reins. They're gaining. The cowboy looked back. Then we'll make them regret catching up. She turned her horse toward a narrow rise. We can't outrun them, but we can choose where we fall. Always the optimist, he muttered, following her up the incline. The ridge flattened into a rocky plateau, high and wide enough for a last stand. From there they could see the road, a thin scar of dirt cutting toward the far hills. The telegraph post stood faintly visible, its wire glinting in the light. There, she said, pointing. That's where this ends. He checked his revolver. 3 rounds left. You sure? Every story ends somewhere. He smiled grimly. Just hoping mine's not here. They dismounted, leading the horses behind the rocks for cover. Cutter's men approached in a loose formation, their torches flickering like ghosts in daylight. Cutter himself rode at the front, coat flaring, eyes hard as steel. "You think you're heroes," he shouted, "but you're just stains waiting for rain," the girl called back. "Then let it rain." The first shots came quick. The cowboy ducked low, firing back, the sound of each bullet echoing off stone. One rider fell. Another stumbled and crawled. Cutter kept coming, relentless. "Keep your head down," the cowboy yelled. "I'm not hiding," she replied, drawing another arrow. Her hands were steady, eyes locked. Each release found its mark. Cutter shouted orders. 2 men broke off, circling to flank them. The cowboy saw the movement and cursed under his breath. "They're splitting us. Then we split them first." He slid down the slope, catching one of the flankers off guard. They grappled, rolling through the dirt, fists and dust flying. The cowboy drove the man's head into the ground, then turned as another came charging. A single shot dropped him mid-stride. Up above, the girl fought her own battle. A bullet grazed her arm, but she didn't falter. Her bowstring snapped from strain, and without pause, she picked up the fallen rider's revolver. The sound startled him. Her first gunshot, then another, then silence. He climbed back up the ridge, breath ragged. She stood there, smoke rising from the pistol, blood soaking her sleeve. "You all right?" he asked. "Still standing?" He nodded. "Good." Below them, only Cutter remained. His men were gone, scattered or dead. Yet he didn't retreat. He sat on his horse, watching them both like a man studying a painting. "You think this means anything?" Cutter called out. "Those papers won't bring her back." The girl froze. "How do you know about her?" Cutter smiled. "Because I was there. I watched you dig through the ashes, remember? You cried till your hands bled. I told them to let you live." She raised the pistol. "You should have killed me then." "I did," he said softly. "You just haven't stopped walking." Her hand trembled. The cowboy stepped beside her. "Don't." Her eyes glistened, the fury behind them shaking loose years of silence. "He buried my child." "I know," the cowboy said, his voice low, "but don't bury yourself with him." Cutter laughed. "She already has." The girl fired. Cutter's body jolted once, then slid from his saddle, the dust rising around him like smoke from a dying fire. The sound faded. Only the wind remained. The cowboy stepped closer, watching the body lie still. "It's done," he said. She didn't answer. The pistol hung loose in her hand, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "Come on," he said gently. "We've got to move. The post is close." She nodded, slow and distant. He was right about one thing. "What's that?" "I stopped walking a long time ago." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then let's start again." They rode the last mile in silence. When the telegraph post finally rose against the sky, she dismounted and opened the satchel. Her fingers trembled as she fed the letters into the machine. The line crackled, carrying truth into the world like fire through wire. When it was done, she stood still for a long time, eyes on the desert below. The cowboy leaned against the post, hat pulled low, the ghost of a smile on his lips. "World's gonna know what happened," he said. "Maybe," she whispered, "but knowing doesn't always change it." "Maybe not," he said, "but it changes us." The wind rose, warm and dry, carrying the scent of rain. She turned toward him, the faintest curve of peace in her expression. For the first time since he'd met her, she didn't look like she was running. The horizon glowed red, and the thunder rolled far off in the distance, like the sound of old sins breaking loose. The storm came fast, thick clouds rolling in from the west, swallowing the horizon. The air turned heavy, the scent of rain mixing with smoke and dust. They stood by the telegraph post as thunder cracked in the distance, rumbling like the earth itself was waking. The girl stared out across the desert, the satchel now empty. "It's done," she said. "The message is gone. There's no taking it back." The cowboy adjusted his hat, watching the horizon darken. Then Cutter's truth just went riding on a wire. She gave a faint nod. "He'll still have friends in high places. Then we'll ride higher." A dry laugh escaped her. "You think the world's waiting to be fair?" He met her gaze. "No, but it might be watching." For a moment, the rain began, a soft drizzle at first, cooling the dust on their skin. The girl tilted her face toward the sky, eyes closing. It was the first time he'd seen her look at peace. "You can go now," she said quietly. "Go where?" "Wherever men like you go when they've done enough saving." He smiled without humor. "Never found that place." She turned, tightening the strap on her horse's saddle. "Then you'll die trying." "Maybe," he said, stepping closer, "but I'd rather die trying than live running." A flicker of something crossed her face. Fear, maybe longing, maybe both. She looked away. "You don't understand. That message doesn't end it. Cutter had partners, traders, soldiers, men who built their names on our graves." He placed a hand on her arm. "Then we fight them too." She shook her head. "You don't get it. They don't come with guns, they come with laws." He let that sink in, the kind of enemy that never bleeds, only buys. "Then we use what we've got," he said. "Word spreads fast. Men talk. Justice travels on wind and rumor." She looked at him, eyes glinting with something between exhaustion and faith. "You really believe that?" "I believe in what I can ride toward." She smiled faintly. "You sound like the kind of man who'd chase the sun." He chuckled. "Only till it sets." A low crack of thunder rolled overhead, and lightning split the sky in two. The telegraph poles sparked, wires hissing as rain hit the copper. "Storm's cutting the line," he said. "We'd better move." She nodded, swinging up onto her horse. "Where to?" "North first," he said. "Maybe beyond the border after." She hesitated. "And after that?" He looked toward the storm. "After that's too far to see." They rode through the downpour, the rain turning the desert to mud. The sky burned silver with lightning, each flash revealing ghost shapes of cactus and stone. Their clothes clung to their skin, but neither complained. By dusk, they reached a canyon mouth and took shelter beneath an overhang. The fire refused to start, so they sat in the dark, the storm raging outside. The girl's voice came soft through the rain. "When this is over, what will you do?" He thought for a while. "Find some quiet place, maybe plant something." She laughed softly. "What would you plant?" He smiled in the dark. "Whatever grows back." Her laughter faded, and she turned serious. "You ever think about leaving all this behind?" "Every day," he said, "but the road keeps pulling." "Maybe it's not the road," she whispered. "Maybe it's the ghosts." He looked at her, the flicker of lightning revealing her face, tired, fierce, alive. "You think they'll ever rest?" "Not until I do." The rain slowed to a steady rhythm. The cowboy leaned back against the rock, eyes half closed. "Then maybe tomorrow we'll start over." "Tomorrow," she echoed, almost like a prayer. Outside, the last of the thunder rolled away, and the world settled into silence again. She looked at him, his hat tipped low, his hand still resting on the revolver even in half-sleep. "You saved me," she whispered. He didn't open his eyes. "You just forgot how to breathe." She smiled faintly. "And you reminded me." He nodded once. "For now." The fire finally caught then, small, flickering, stubborn as life itself. By morning, the sky was pale and heavy, the air washed clean by rain. The desert shimmered with puddles of reflected light, as if the world had been broken and pieced back together. The cowboy woke first, stretching the stiffness from his shoulders. The girl was already standing at the edge of the ledge, staring out at the valley below. "You don't sleep much," he said. "Dreams aren't kind," she answered. He moved beside her. The horizon was wide, unending, but quiet now. No riders, no dust, only the whisper of wind against the stones. "For you did it," he said softly. "You sent the truth." She didn't look at him. "Truth doesn't end men like Cutter. It just makes more men like him nervous." He smirked. "That's a start." She turned to face him, her expression softer than before. "And you? What happens to a man when there's no one left to save?" He thought a moment. "He finds someone worth staying for." A silence passed, gentle this time, not sharp like before. The girl looked down at her hand, flexing the fingers still bruised from the fight. "You could stay," she said quietly. He smiled faintly. "You'd hate that." "Maybe." She looked away, hiding the curve of a smile. "But maybe I'd learn not to." The cowboy reached into his coat and pulled out a small and folded scrap of paper, the map she'd given him the night before. He handed it back. "It's yours." She frowned. I told you to keep it, and I told you I don't run." Their eyes met. For the first time, the silence between them felt safe. He turned, gathering his things. The storm had left the ground soft, and each step sank deep. The girl watched him pack, her voice low. "You could have left when Cutter came." He fastened the saddle strap. "Could have. Why didn't you?" He paused, looking at her through the morning light. "Because you didn't ask me to." The wind shifted, carrying the faint hum of the telegraph wire in the distance. It sounded like something alive again, a pulse running through the land. The girl walked to the fire pit, kneeling to stir the ashes. "When my people prayed," she said, "they didn't ask for victory. They asked for balance, for storms to end where rivers begin." He nodded. "Seems the world could use more prayers like that." She smiled faintly. "Then start praying." He looked down at her, the corners of his mouth lifting. "I already did." They rode north through the morning haze. The land stretched endless, mesas in the distance, the air sharp and bright. Every mile felt lighter, though the silence stayed between them, comfortable now, almost companionable. At a crossroads, the trail split, one path leading toward the border, the other into the high country. The cowboy stopped, reins slack in his hands. "This where we part." She looked down the fork to the east, then back to him. "If you keep west, you'll find the towns, people, noise. If you ride with me, you'll find nothing but quiet." He smiled. "Never been much for noise." She tilted her head. "Then you'll fit in fine." For a moment it felt like something fragile might last. The desert wind softened, the horses calm. The girl's eyes met his, dark, steady, alive. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "What?" "Saving me." He took a long breath, not once. Her gaze lingered on him, searching for something unspoken. Then she nodded. "Good." They rode together until the sun began to climb high, their shadows merging on the red sand. By noon, they reached a stretch of flatland where the wind carried the faint scent of rain again. She slowed her horse, looking out over the plain. "This is where my mother was buried," she said. "Where I'll plant her name again." The cowboy dismounted, standing beside her in the wind. He didn't speak, didn't need to. She knelt, digging her hands into the earth. "I don't have flowers," she whispered. He took off his hat and placed it on his chest. "You've got rain." The first drops began to fall, soft and slow. She looked up, eyes glistening, not from sorrow, but something close to release. "You think she'd forgive me?" she asked. He smiled. "She already has." The rain fell harder, washing the blood and dust from their faces. The land smelled clean again, alive. When they finally rode away, the mound of earth behind them shimmered beneath the downpour, and the telegraph wire hummed faintly in the distance, carrying their story into the unknown. The rain stopped by mid-afternoon, leaving the world washed raw and quiet. The horizon shimmered beneath a pale sun, steam rising from the earth like ghosts returning home. The cowboy and the Apache girl rode side by side through the new silence, their horses' hooves sinking deep into the softened clay. Neither spoke for a long time. Every sound, the jingle of tack, the creak of leather, the slow rhythm of hooves felt sacred. Finally, the girl broke the quiet. "You could still turn back," she said. He smiled without looking at her. "You've got a bad habit of saying that." "And you've got a worse one," she replied. "You never do." He chuckled. "Guess I never learned how." The land around them shifted, the red cliffs giving way to rolling plains dotted with sage. A hawk circled overhead, calling once before vanishing into the light. She watched it go. "When I was little," she said, "my mother told me that hawks carry messages between the living and the dead." "What's that one saying?" She glanced toward him. "Maybe that it's time to forgive." He nodded slowly. "Then maybe it's right." They rode on until the sun dipped low, painting the world in gold and blood. When they stopped, it was by a grove of mesquite, the kind that grows only where water hides underground. The girl dismounted, pulling her hands through the wet soil. "It's good ground," she said. "Things could grow here again." He tied his horse and sat nearby, watching her trace circles in the dirt. "You planning on staying?" She looked at the horizon. "For a while. Long enough to build something that lasts longer than hate." He smiled. That's a fine plan. You, she asked. What'll you do? He shrugged. Maybe help. Her head turned, a faint smile touching her lips. You can't stay forever, Cowboy. Maybe not, he said, but I can stay long enough. A quiet peace settled between them, fragile but real, the kind that comes after too much noise, too much loss. She reached into the satchel one last time and pulled out the smallest of the letters, the one she'd kept hidden even from him. She held it over the fire until the flame touched the edge. The paper curled, the ink running as it burned. He frowned. You sure about that? Her eyes reflected the flame. It was my confession. Some truths belong to the dust. He nodded, understanding. Some wounds only closed when you stopped reopening them. The fire burned low, the stars came out, cold and endless. Somewhere far off, thunder rolled again, but softer now, like a promise instead of a threat. The girl spoke first. Do you ever think about what comes after all this? He tilted his hat back, looking at the sky. After what? After fighting? After running? After being angry? He thought for a moment. Maybe peace ain't a place you reach. Maybe it's a moment you earn. She smiled faintly. Then maybe we just earned one. He looked at her, the firelight painting her face in amber and shadow. You did. She turned away, staring into the flames. You always say the right thing too late, he grinned. Better late than never. She laughed softly, the sound strange, almost new. You're a stubborn man. Only when it matters. The laughter faded, leaving the night quiet again. A coyote howled in the distance, and she rose, brushing dust from her skirt. Come morning, she said. I'll ride east. There's a place where the water still runs clear. I'll plant the letters there. Maybe the land will remember. He nodded, standing. And I'll head west, keep the wind company a while. She stepped close enough that he could see the flicker of reflection in her eyes. If the road brings you back, follow the hawks. They always find me. He tipped his hat. Then I'll be looking up. The girl smiled once, then turned away, walking into the moonlight. He watched until she vanished into the open plain, small, defiant, free. The cowboy stood alone beside the dying fire. The telegraph line hummed faintly in the distance, carrying words no longer theirs. He looked toward the dawn breaking across the horizon and whispered to no one. You were right. Some storms do end where rivers begin. Then he mounted his horse and rode west, the sound of hooves fading into the morning wind. The next morning broke clear and sharp. The air smelled of wet stone and mesquite, the world clean again after too much pain. The cowboy rode alone through the low plains, the trail winding between cliffs scarred by storm and memory. Each hoofbeat echoed against the quiet hills like a pulse that refused to die. He reached the river by noon, the same river where he'd first found her, blood on her hands that weren't her own. The current ran higher now, swollen with the rain. He stopped by the bank, dismounted, and stared into the moving water. Across the river something shifted, a flicker of movement, small but deliberate. His hand went to his gun, then he saw her. She stood on the far side, cloak pulled tight, bow across her shoulder. The wind tangled her hair, and for a moment she looked like she'd never left. I thought you'd gone east, he called. Her voice carried over the water, calm but firm. I did. But the land doesn't let go that easy, he smiled faintly. Neither do I. She crossed at the shallow bend, boots sinking into the mud. When she reached him, he saw that her face had changed, less anger, more something else, resolve, maybe, peace, trying to take root. I buried the letters, she said, near the springs where my mother used to sing. The land will keep them safe. He nodded. Then it's done. Not yet, she said. There's something left. She stepped closer and placed a folded piece of paper in his hand. The last map. It shows the border towns. You can go north, find the ranchers who'll protect what's left of the land. They'll listen to a man like you. He looked at the map, then back at her. And what about you? Her eyes softened. I belong here. My people's bones are under this soil. Someone has to stay. He tucked the map into his coat. Then I'll send word when it's safe. She smiled faintly, But there was no joy in it, just a quiet understanding that stretched between them. She looked away, her hand lingering on the saddle. The air grew still, and the weight of their silence seemed to stretch forever. The past hung like a shroud over both of them, and yet neither knew how to lift it. A soft, distant sound broke the moment. Hoofbeats, several riders, coming too fast. Her hand tightened on the reins. "He's dead," she whispered. The cowboy's grip tightened on his gun. Not all ghosts stay buried. From the ridge to the west, 3 riders appeared, cutter's marks still on their coats. Loyal men, maybe, or those chasing what scraps remained. Cutter himself was nowhere in sight, but that didn't mean he wasn't watching, hidden in the distance. The girl's eyes darkened. "They'll never stop," she said. "Then neither will we." They didn't wait for them to draw closer. The girl raised her bow, the smooth motion fluid. Her first arrow took the lead rider in the chest, and he fell from his saddle without a sound. The second rider fired a shot as he spurred his horse forward, but the bullet only kissed the dirt by the cowboy's boot. He raised his own revolver, and with a single shot dropped the second man in his tracks. The remaining rider hesitated, fear flashed in his eyes, and the cowboy took the shot before he could raise his rifle. And then silence. The cowboy stepped forward, checking each fallen rider. The girl walked toward the last one, her hand still on her bow, ready for the next move. "You were right," she said quietly. "They'll never stop." He watched the last rider for a moment longer, making sure he wasn't about to rise again. "You didn't come this far to stop now," he replied. She looked toward the horizon. "Cutter's got his hand in more places than we'll ever know. He'll send more and they'll come faster." He holstered his revolver and glanced at the rising smoke from the fires that had burned the night before. "Then we keep moving." She turned her head. "You're not afraid of running?" "No," he said with a quiet smile. "I'm afraid of staying." They didn't speak again as they mounted their horses, and for a while, the only sounds were the faintest echoes of their pursuit behind them. They rode through a dry riverbed, across flat plains until the light began to dim. The quiet desert stretched far ahead, the endless road always open to them. By dusk, they reached a town, a quiet, forgotten place tucked between the high cliffs. The air felt thinner here, like the land itself was holding its breath. The cowboy looked at the girl. "This is it," he said, pulling his reins. Her eyes swept over the town, and for a moment, he saw a flicker of hope in them, something she hadn't shown before. She turned to him. "This is where I leave you." He frowned. "Leave me? I don't think you've left anyone for good." She smiled faintly. "Maybe not. But this is where your fight ends, cowboy. You've done your part. Now you can walk away." He shook his head. "And leave you to do what?" "Fight alone." She looked out at the horizon, where the last light of day faded. "It's not about fighting anymore. It's about what comes after." For a long time, neither of them spoke. The weight of the past seemed to hang in the air between them, and yet there was peace now. Not resolution, but something close. "Then come back when it's over," he said. Her smile was small, but it was real. "I'll keep my promise." "If you keep yours." The cowboy watched her disappear into the fading light, knowing that whatever happened next, she would be the one to carry the truth forward. The storm had passed. The road ahead was still long, but now he knew it didn't matter where it led. He'd already made his choice. The road ahead was quieter now. The dust had settled, and the air smelled of rain and something older, the scent of a story finally coming to rest. The cowboy sat on his horse, looking back at the fading silhouette of the girl, the one who had started this journey beside him, and the one who would carry the weight of it long after he was gone. He had tried to outrun his past. He had tried to outrun the ghosts that trailed him like shadows. He had tried to leave behind the mistakes, the memories, and the pain. He thought if he kept moving, kept riding, the ghosts would fade into the distance. But the truth, the real truth, was that the past wasn't something you could outrun. It wasn't a shadow you could outrun in the heat of the day, or a storm you could ride through faster than the thunder. The past was something you carried with you, something that shaped who you were and who you could become. It was a heavy cloak, woven with regrets and old choices, worn threadbare with time, but it was yours to wear, whether you liked it or not. As he rode, he thought about all the roads he had crossed, each one leading him to this moment or to this place where the air felt still and full of possibility. The world around him was still and quiet. The distant hills seemed endless, like they could go on forever, and the town he'd just passed was nothing but a memory now. A fading silhouette on the horizon, the last marker of a world he was slowly leaving behind. He could feel the weight of everything, the loss of loved ones, the promises made and broken, the way the dust from his boots had settled on so many lives. Every decision, every turn he'd taken had led him here, and for the first time, he realized it wasn't the mistakes that mattered. It wasn't the wrong choices or the things that had been lost. It was the ride itself, the act of moving forward, of not stopping, even when the world tried to hold you down. But the truth was that none of it mattered anymore. The fight was done. It wasn't about running or hiding anymore. The guns had fallen silent, and the dust was settling. There were no more ghosts chasing him, no more blood to be spilled. There was only the horizon stretching wide before him, and the open road that was still waiting for him to walk it. There was peace in that, a kind of stillness that made the cowboy feel like the world had paused just for him, like the earth itself was holding its breath, waiting for him to decide which direction to take. As he rode on, he realized that maybe that was enough. Maybe the journey wasn't about finding an answer or about having everything figured out. Maybe the journey was just about being present, just about taking the next step and trusting that it would lead you somewhere you needed to be. The road didn't care where you ended up. It didn't care what you left behind or how long you'd been running. The road was just there, always moving forward, and you had to choose whether to follow it or not. He wasn't sure where the road would take him next. Maybe it would lead him to a place where he could finally rest, where he could lay down the weight of his past and just be. Or maybe it would lead him to something else, a new fight, a new chapter, a new story that needed telling. The future was a far-off thing, a mystery waiting on the other side of tomorrow, but for the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid of where the road would go. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the map the girl had given him, the map that would lead to the ranchers who might protect the land. He could feel its weight, the promise wrapped in the fragile paper. It wasn't just a map, it was a lifeline, a link to a future that had seemed impossible just a short while ago. It wasn't just a collection of lines and roads, it was hope. It was a path out of the darkness. He held it for a moment, letting the edges brush against his fingers, feeling the ink still fresh, still full of possibility. But he didn't think about it for long. He tucked it back into his coat. He wasn't ready to look at it yet. The future wasn't something to plan for, it was something to live in the moment for. The map would lead him where it needed to go when the time was right, but for now, he just needed to keep moving, one step at a time, 1 mile after the other. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the earth, the cowboy knew that the real journey was not about where you ended up. It wasn't about the destination, the town, the land, or the people you were supposed to save. It was about the choices you made along the way, the decisions that shaped who you became, the people you met, the promises you kept, and the moments when you realized you were finally where you needed to be. No matter how far you'd come, or how far you still had to go, he had made his choice. And in doing so, he had left behind a piece of himself on this road, just as he had left a piece of himself with her. The past was behind him now. The future was uncertain, but that was a burden he no longer carried. He could let it go just for a while, and let the road lead him wherever it would. The road was still long, but now, for the first time, he wasn't alone. He had ridden through storms, fought his way through the darkness, and in doing so, had found something he never expected. Not peace, not resolution, but a new understanding, a realization that the journey, however long, however painful, was the only thing that mattered. And for the first time, he was content to keep riding, to keep moving, knowing that whatever came next, he wouldn't be facing it alone. Well, partner, that's the end of this ride. If you enjoyed the tale, don't just sit there waiting for the next dust storm. Hit that subscribe button and saddle up for more adventures. The journey's far from over, and the wildest roads are still ahead. You won't want to miss what's coming next. So hitch up and keep your eyes on the horizon. I'll see you out there.